Classes in session.
Good evening, everybody. Well, good morning. I guess it's 7 a.m. on a Tuesday. This is on Learn 16 Classes in Session, and I've got Stefan back. I've got Stu back. Why? Because we are going to talk about the best season of Buffy, season 2, and I'm going to give both individuals a chance to give a little bit of who they are, where we can find them, and then we're going to roll right into season 2 of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Stefan.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at sjmaroni, SJMARONI on Instagram. And you can also find my podcast, Rebel Without a Closet, at RWACPOD on Instagram. You can also find us on Facebook under Rebel Without a Closet, the podcast. And there's a merch store. Go to linktree/RWAC and you can find us there as well.
Fantastic. Stu, what about you?
All right, you can find me at Janikon, JANIKON_ on TikTok if you want to laugh with me every single day. I also contribute regularly to Stefan's podcast, Rebel Without a Closet, where you can find all the links that Stefan just mentioned. Mm-hmm. And I'm also wanted to be a vampire slayer since I was a child. So like I would have trolled graveyards if a graveyard was close to where I lived. But
listen, I thought about doing TikToks in graveyards, but I don't want to be disrespectful. I feel like my desire to be funny and to be, push past that.
Disrespectful.
I live across from Mount Pleasant. I get it.
Also, that's a great graveyard.
It is. But I will say that the only reason I am not a vampire slayer and the only reason I don't drink tequila anymore is because we played Kings with white tequila and gold tequila. And I got so inebriated that I ended up in a cemetery and was looking for vampires. I genuinely thought that was Stuart's story from before. Turns out someone else did this too. It's weird.
No, it was high school. I didn't realize that. My favorite story, when I was a kid, I was like walking my friend Crystal at the time through a graveyard. And I loved I was a very dramatic kid. I don't know if you guys know this. I'm also sort of dramatic now. Not really. I know it's shocking. Guys, yeah, sure. I know, it's crazy. Stop. It's too much. I know. Too far departure from who I am today. But we were walking through the graveyard and she was talking about how she doesn't like graveyards, they creep her out, all this stuff. So I just was like, Crystal, you have to stop. Ghosts are not. And then I was like, and then threw myself down a hill and lay on top of a graveyard, like landed very much like this. And she screamed. But the problem is that in this whole process of doing it for my art, I slashed my elbow. So I just had to live with that.
The best. Sometimes the best. Okay, I have the best prop for this season. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm. I can't wait.
Are you
ready? The Orb of Thessala.
Stop.
Look at that.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. Stop it.
Vault Keeper
Nisi morta, nisi afflente, spiritus nucasta rugamente, lasi orbita se fe.
Speak English. Is this supposed to happen?
We're just going to recount all of the story, just to catch everybody up on this season. Okay, so this season starts. Buffy kills the Master. We're done. Every season has a big bad. If you're just getting into Buffy, it's like a video game. At the end of every season, you got a big bad. But the interesting part about this season is who the big bad is and why he is bad. Stu.
But I also think this is what we were talking about last season, last recap. This is a consistent storyline all throughout. You follow one storyline throughout the entire season, and it just layers on top of that. And I love it. It's so good. It's so meaty. It kind of touches every single character and pushes characters out of their comfort zone. And I love that because you see like a character in two different ways. You see like Angel, who is loving and wonderful and supportive and just wants good, and then you see Angelus, who is fun and playful and evil and so like maniacal and just dark. But you see that Angelus bring out all the darker parts of every other character. You have Drusilla and Spike, and then like discourse between them and all the kind of the triad of them. Then you have like Buffy's darker side. You have after her like the breakup and him becoming this like pseudo abusive boyfriend. Or being the abusive boyfriend metaphor is what I wanted to say.
He murders.
You have like Willow and Xander. Oh, it's so good. It's such a great fucking season.
And for those who haven't seen it, we're breaking all sorts of things here, but you have to understand that primarily Angel is a vampire with a soul. He was cursed, and he was cursed by gypsies. Excuse me for that terminology, but that's what they talk about in the show. He was cursed because of the damage he did to one of their own, and he was cursed to have a soul. They didn't kill him; they wanted him to suffer. So he was going to be a vampire with all of those urges, but he was going to feel guilt, horrible, painful guilt about that. And he was supposed to feel guilty forever. And then this one thing happens, and we're going to get to it later because I want to get through some of the other. Then one thing happens that shatters the curse. And then we go from there. So where do you guys want to start?
Pure happiness.
Moment of truth.
Where do we start?
That's a lot of pressure.
I think we should start at the beginning. I think that's a really good place to start.
Start at the beginning.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thanks, Stuart.
Very good place to start.
Stop.
I honestly think it'd be really great to start because Buffy's traumatized after the end of season 1, which I thought was really important going into season 2. She comes back, totally fine girl, no emotions, wants to punish everybody.
Recap.
Right.
Died.
She died.
Yeah, came back, dies at the hand of the master.
And she was brought back to life. So she's having, well, a little PTSD, let's say.
Exactly.
A little.
Because also, it was foretold that she was going to die. She's 16 years old. She comes back at 17, comes back from a summer. She cuts her hair, has a beautiful bob, wears leather. Has changed her makeup up a little bit. She's no longer into the blues. And now we're into the hard mascara and dark eye. I love it. Smoky eyes were big this season.
But I just love the fact that was a really interesting way to sort of portray her PTSD. Was just, it's like, I died, nothing matters anymore. Like what do I have to do? Just going through the motions.
Nothing left. I feel like it's kind of like, and I don't know if this is what they were going for, but you guys must have been through a relationship. I've been through relationships where I get hurt and it's pathetic and whatever. But then I've been through a couple where I was done. Like I broke up, I went through that, and then I had nothing. Right. I was a vapid, empty. So like people would try to connect with me, and I'd be like, "Oh, I think I'm broke. No, this is me broken. I don't have I got nothing."
And that's the worst part.
Yeah, I don't know if that's what they were kind of playing on a little bit there about the idea when you go. Obviously, we didn't die, but when you feel like you do when you're a kid, or when you're an adult, sometimes it just shuts everything down, I guess, eventually it comes back.
Well, it's the idea of there's so much pressure that she finally just shuts down and she says, you know what? I'm going to go through the motions of, fine, you want me to do something? Let's just do it. Oh, you're here for work? Is this a work call? Let me go back to sleep. I get it. I don't need my friends getting in my way, because you can also tell that she doesn't want to hurt others. Like, it's like, I want to get people out of the way because I just want to focus on this. I don't need friends. I don't need my watcher. I don't need my love interest. I just want to get shit done because I'm broken. But
also, like, no one can save me.
No one can save me.
No one can save me.
You couldn't save me from that. How can you save me from anything else?
Like,
yes, it's weird because he did.
But that's the thing. He didn't save her. He brought her back.
Yes, which is that when
she died.
What's the difference?
That's because the difference was they didn't prevent it.
Yeah,
they cleaned it up after. They were able to bring her back, but no one was alongside her walking into the master's lair to die. She was the lamb for the slaughter.
They all just said to her, you are going to meet him and you are going to die. And she's like, I don't want to die. It's like, well, it's prophesied. It's like, so figure it out. And then just that defeated of, I have to do this to save everyone else if this is part of the process, only to realize that the only reason he gets out is because she went to him. So if she had just run away or didn't listen to the prophecy, didn't listen to everybody else, she not only would have lived, but nothing would have happened. He would have been stuck there and they would have found another way together. So that defeat and that sort of like being separated and also just being so, like, no one was there to help me.
Do you think that destiny, that fate, that under, the underpinning that it's prophesized, and just trying to compare it to real life is this whole notion that if we resign ourselves to that, if we resign ourselves to things we think are going to be in a way that brings them to pass.
Oh, 100%.
Right? It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's what they always are.
But the best thing about Buffy is that there's always something. There's always death is my gift. There's always the prophecy says she'll die. There's always something. And the best part is that if they just work together and focus and think a little harder, or something clicks and it's an aha moment, that's when things work out the way it's supposed to. And I think for her, when she finally got to see those bones and she got to smash those bones, that was her aha moment of, I'm going to be okay. My friends
Mhm.
are here. Angel is here. I'm going
Yeah.
to be okay. You know?
But I also think that, like, I am 100% agree. But I also think, like, being able to smash the bones was able. There was a finality to that, that she could
Yeah.
actually take her power back
Mm-hmm.
and crush into death, so he could never return.
Yeah.
I do think that in this episode we need to call out the best quote ever, which is, "Buffy, you're really campaigning for bitch of the year." And Buffy turns around and says, "As reigning champion, you're nervous." Best thing in
And
the world.
what
I
does
repeat
Cordelia
myself
say?
multiple times.
What does Cordelia
Sorry?
say? What does she say in response? I can hold my own, which
Oh,
I
I
think
can
was the
hold my
best
own.
response.
Yeah.
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 So that was
He was a
amazing.
great,
But if you keep
great
talking
character.
to your loser friends, you're gonna lose them too. I love it. I just love everything about it.
Cordelia is
Also, I
so
think
fucking amazing. Excuse me.
let me
Cordelia is
say that.
amazing.
Yeah, I think
He really
Cordelia.
is.
Like, can we talk about Cordelia for a second? Because
Yeah,
I think that
let's
she
talk
really
about
came into her own this
Cordelia.
season.
For those who don't know Charisma Carpenter in real life and what she went through, she went some pretty horrific things when it comes to He Who Shall Not Be Named.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a feeling, if I was a betting woman, there was a lot going on way before that that she's just not even putting on the table, that a
I
lot of
agree.
characters aren't even putting on the table,
Agreed.
because that was a time where they're like that. Well, besides Sarah Michelle Gellar, it was new life for all of them, right? Sarah Michelle Gellar did the whole daytime TV,
Yeah.
right? And this
All
is
my
Yeah.
it.
children.
So
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering, all my children, I'm wondering how much she suppressed, how much she ignored, how much she's really even, because she was an amazing character. And for her to go off to Angel and then have all of that happen,
Mm-hmm.
in the back of my head, I'm just like, I'd love to know,
Damaged for a
you know,
while. And
yeah,
what's so interesting is that the story that everyone that James Marsters always talks about is that moment where Joss literally cornered him in a room and said, "You're not going to ruin my show," but I'm like, because he didn't want to keep Spike. He wanted to.
Spike on. No, the
Spike was supposed
fans
to be gone.
love Spike.
In
Yeah,
season 2, in this season, where we get Spike and Drusilla, who are two of the best characters in
by
my
far.
mind, because their
Yeah.
stories both span Buffy and Angel and the comics, and they're so intricate and so interesting. I'd say the only thing about them is that something happens in season 5, which we won't talk about yet, but the fact that he was able to build on those characters only shows great writing, great skill, great ability, but he hated the fact that he had Spike in that show. He didn't want him in there. And when you think about it, that story of him cornering James Marston, right? No, Marsters, excuse me. Cornering him
Marsters,
was probably in season 2. So this
yeah,
had started right from
yep.
the jump. And so Cordelia or Christmas Carpenter absolutely had issues with him like immediately. I also thought rewatching the first episode of season 2 when all 4 of them are hanging above the bones, in my
Yeah,
mind
yeah,
from a production standpoint, I'm like, they must be so uncomfortable because they are
yeah.
hanging, the blood is
How
flowing
long?
down. How
Yeah,
long were
yeah,
they there? And then when you think
yeah.
about it, well, if he's so mean to them on, he was just like, keep going, keep rolling.
Stay there.
Yeah,
You're
stay
fine.
there. I'm all about
It's
feminism. Keep going.
part of me now likes to think, because obviously all of us love Buffy so much, and we've had to come
Mhm.
to terms with the creator of the show. But what I love about what you just said is Buffy became great, not necessarily just because of Josh Whedon, but by the sounds of it, in spite of
Of
Josh
Joss.
Whedon.
Yep.
You
Yeah.
you saw a show, if that is true, because let's be honest, you get rid of Spike.
What happens
What
next?
happens to the show? You lose a depth to that show that I don't think another character
Mhm.
could have interjected. You know what I mean? Yes.
What I thought was super, super great about Spike, and I think this is the thing the show needed, was it offered a character who was likable, who had charisma, who was
Mhm.
funny, who it was a different side of a vampire. You had a vampire who was evil and loved another vampire, was seeking to make her better. And I thought
Mhm.
was really
Mhm.
interesting was when you paired up against Angel in the beginning of the season, when Angel sired Angel sired Spike. I think it was really interesting because when Angel flipped and went back to Angelus, as evil as Spike was, Angel was 10 times worse. Even
Yes.
Spike was like, we're a little too far into the darkness right now. Let's just like take a
Yeah.
Mhm.
whole step back. But I thought it was really interesting because you need those moments, you need those characters to have more dimension. And I think that he is the first villain that you actually got a full backstory over. You had full
Right.
dimension from the time he started. It
Right.
Yeah.
wasn't a one tone they started to paint layers on top of. It was like a layered demon. And I will say, I think that was more the actor than the writers. I think they gave the actor
I
a
agree.
very little to work with in the beginning, and he made it his own. And I
Right.
think that's where I
Because
see
he was.
Joss Whedon really having a problem with him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and also I just love the fact that if you really look at it, like Spike and Drusilla are such a parallel to Angel and Buffy, and for
Mm.
Angel to come over to Spike and Drusilla and start messing with that dynamic, and then then you have Spike and Buffy working together. Like I love the fact that they had to kind of like switch between the two, because one of the most fascinating things about season 2, and also just Spike and Drusilla in general, is that these are the only vampires we've seen up to this point that have real emotions, that have
Yeah.
passion, that
Mm.
have
Yep.
like jealousy and love and concern for one another. Like it's so wild, because the very first thing that we see is when Drusilla walks in during School Hard to meet the Anointed One. She's just
Spy.
confused, and Spike, she's confused, and she's just in that
She's
space,
weak.
and he immediately turns to his boy face and says,
Yeah.
Drew, you're weak. And he's like holding her up. No vampire will give a shit about another vampire in this thing.
Well,
And then
do you think it's a problem in the storytelling there a little bit, in the consistency? If a vampire loses his soul when he
Mm.
becomes or she becomes a vampire, do you think there's a little bit of an inconsistency that Spike seems to have one already?
I actually, if I can say, I think it's because they had such passion prior to his siring. So I might be wrong in this, and you can both confirm. I thought Drusilla was the one who sired Spike, not Angel.
No, because I mean it was retconned
I think it was
because
retconned, right?
in School
What?
Hard he says you were my sire.
Yeah.
Yes, he
Retcon means they
does.
went back and changed it later on.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Because
but
it
You were
what
was,
my
I
sire, man. I remember that
yeah,
line, right?
yeah,
but Drusilla's the one that finds him in the alley.
Yeah.
right.
And but he has such he immediately sees her and is like, who is this woman? And he's so enamored by her that when he is sired by her, he is devoted to her, and so that connection just stays with and evolves over time. That's how I felt, Stuart.
I
Yeah.
also think too that what was really interesting about it was when Willow in season 3. I'm only using this for a second. When she says, and I think I'm kind of gay, and
Yeah,
Buffy says to her, being a vampire has no basis in the person that you were as a human. And Angel
true.
goes, oh, well, actually, good point.
Yeah,
I find it really interesting
pregnant pause.
because Angel was so evil. So you have to
Mhm.
wonder what kind of person he was. And you
Mhm.
get these clips in season 2 where he comes out, he's like, what's a girl like you doing in a place like this? He
Yeah,
seems like
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
someone who is a swindler, who
Oh
takes
yeah.
Yeah.
advantage, free litter,
And
and awful.
and also we in the first few seasons don't see the relationship between Darla and Angel, but we know they have a very similar relationship to Spike and Drusilla. And
Well, that was the
that
thing is that they,
moment, sorry, with
go
that
on.
moment when he kills Darla in the first season, she looks at him and goes, Angel, and drops. It's because there is a relationship between those two. So it is interesting that if you are soulless, I guess that doesn't mean emotionless. That just means without guilt or
I
resent or
think you
penance.
become how I always read it was that they become a lot like like times 1,000% of their like worst quality. So
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
Spike is a lot more passionate. He is codependent with Drusilla.
Hmm.
Very
Darla,
ambiguous, very, yeah.
yeah, Darla and Angelus were very power driven, power hungry,
Yeah,
wanted to dominate. And you had Willow when she became a vampire was again the same.
sadistic.
She was sadistic, and you see that reflected in the way she was when she was evil as a witch.
Yeah, that's
Yes,
true. That's
and it,
true.
it it does make sense, because I guess just the worst traits of you as a human would just be amplified tenfold. Well, yeah, 100%, which makes sense, because when you look at the way Spike responded, like Spike was so, well, we can't go too far because that's revealed in future seasons, but yes, passionate would be and codependent would be two perfect descriptions for Spike, and also knowing that he has to try 3 times as hard again later because he doesn't have a soul. It's a
Yeah,
whole
yeah.
thing. Mhm.
But it's just so weird. Like, I guess the moment where that scene you're talking about, where Drusilla walks in for the first time, and he quickly turns around and turns into his very human face. To me, that's a soul. To
Mhm.
me, that's something else. And
Mhm.
obviously, we're dealing in there's not real hard and fast rules. But I thought that was a very interesting, because Spike will eventually choose.
Right.
Spike will
Yes.
Mhm.
eventually choose. And
Yeah.
even I guess my point is the fact that he can choose
Hmm.
dictates he had, I'm holding up this. Why? Because when Angelus was bad, he was given a choice. He was given a choice. We're going to take it
Hmm.
away. We're gonna create the spell again. And what does he do? He takes this and smashes it against the wall. He doesn't want, even as that choice would have been easy, but he doesn't want anything to do with it, right?
I have a
I
weird stretch. It's a weird stretch theory they've always had about the Wizard of Oz. Okay,
All
because
right.
and it's
Horse.
weird, and I'll bring it in because it's my favorite thing in the world. But I never thought the Wicked Witch was the most evil person in
Oh,
Oz. I thought it was the Tin
yes.
Man. The reason I thought it was the Tin Man is because the Tin Man has no emotions. He has no heart. He doesn't care. He would act without reason. Whereas the witch is driven by passion and anger and resentment and emotions. Where if they were trying to say, "I have no heart. I wish I had a heart that could beat so I could feel love." Well, what else are you not feeling? So for me, it was always so interesting that if I could recreate the Wizard of Oz, like just universe, I would
Man's
have the
back.
Tin Man being the big bad. He'd be like the Ultron. It would make no sense. He has no emotions, no feelings, no human connection. All he wants is to feel like one. And then when you have Glinda or I sing Elphaba, but the evil the Wicked Witch, they're driven on passion. So I think that's interesting. When it comes to like the soul, what does that really mean? And again, I think
Yeah,
the
it's a
soul is
great
just
question.
that part of it, you know?
Yeah.
I always thought the spell that was actually a really interesting point, Stefan. Now I'm going to think about that all night long.
Thank
Um,
you.
what I thought was what I found, what I've sort of taken from the curse being kind of like the re-bringing in his soul or like giving him back his soul. It always seems in the Buffy universe, a soul is like, especially when you look at Angel, it's a cell, it's like a conscience they've reassigned to him, like
Hmm.
an
Right.
amplified conscience and like metric of like what it is to be human. And I think it's interesting because you have regret by every other vampire. Like
Hmm.
every other vampire feels regret and remorse um and has that. You even have it with Spike, and I think it's interesting because oftentimes, especially later on in this series, and I guess in this season as well, they're all motivated by selfishness. Like even
Hmm.
Spike wanting Drusilla back was because he
Oh,
doesn't want Angel to have her.
yeah.
Yeah.
He doesn't want it to be
Doesn't want
different.
things to change.
Whereas like later on, when you assign a soul back to Spike in season 7, it
Spoiler
becomes
alert.
more of I
Big
I
one.
did something to you.
Hmm.
The show has been on off the air, guys, for like over 20 years.
Guys, whoever's
Let's
listening to this and hasn't watched
calm down.
Buffy, get on.
Well, here's a
And
fun.
I
Sorry, go
do
ahead.
think too, like with Angelus, what I found so interesting was the soul was such a toxic part of him. Like you see that throughout the ages. Like he doesn't handle it well
Yeah.
Hmm.
because of all the devastation and murder that he has caused.
Yeah.
But what I find most interesting about it was he was never able to kind of be okay with it. He never found peace
Yeah.
with having this soul. There was never any forgiveness for him. He was always punished by having a soul. And I found it really interesting through all of the good deeds he did throughout Buffy and Angel
Yeah.
and
Going into
the,
Angel. Yeah.
Hmm.
going into Angel as well. It was always this like Angelus was the most evil thing in the world, so dangerous, so horrible. We have to get Angel his soul back.
Hmm.
So he is crushed under guilt.
Yeah.
And that
Hmm.
was what I found the most interesting about it was the fact that Angel, although one of my favorite characters, and Angelus is somebody that I loved
Phyllis is my
watching.
favorite.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
I found it so interesting that every other vampire that we came in contact with, whether it be Harmony or
Hmm.
um,
Hate
Spike or
her.
Drusilla or Darla or any of the other characters, you had like a layer, like you had they learned something. They were able to live without his soul and have friends and relationships and go to work and all these things. And Angel had to be like legitimately like held under a
Hmm.
curse to just be
Yeah.
reasonable.
Yes, and
Yeah.
so what's really interesting, and I have a question that I'm going to ask after this. So, if we're going to spoil, there's there is an additional comic book series that is based on Willow and Spike, where they have to find a soul for Drusilla. And long story short, Spike's soul is taken out of him and put in Drusilla. But they thought by removing Spike's soul that they'd get Will and the Bloody back, and it would be this whole big thing. So there's this big, cliffhanger of, oh, Spike doesn't have a soul anymore. And then he just responds normally. And they're like, wait, what's going on? He's like, I have been fighting without a soul for years. He's like, I didn't need a
Yeah.
soul. I don't need it now. I am who I am. And I thought that was so interesting because it's
Mm.
true. Like, technically, when you think about all the other characters, and maybe it is just because of all the hard work Spike has done. But
Mhm.
the question I have is, who do you think is more powerful and dangerous, Angelus or Spike, William the Bloody? Who is more powerful between the two?
I'd have to say Angelus. Only because one of my favorite episodes has to be The Judge.
Okay.
Pieces, we get the pieces, our job sucks. It's right, it's tattoo. And here's why. Because he is willing, irrespective of consequence. He has nothing on. The most dangerous people in the world are the people that have nothing left to lose. I don't care what comes next. I am going to burn it all down,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I'll go with a smile on my face knowing I'm the one that brought it all down. And that Spike
That's
always
Kava.
had, and that's why he fights against him in that. He always had a vested interest in the world being the world.
Yeah, because he wanted to have
He didn't
fun.
want it. Yeah, he didn't want it
Right.
sucked into some demon. Who wants that? That's not enjoyable. I don't want that. I have a vested interest in this.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Angel is just like everything could be burned to a cinder, and that's the only way I'm going to die happy because I'm that horrific.
Well, and that's
He
why I
didn't want.
think Angelus is a lot more dangerous, but I think Spike is a lot more powerful because he can control those emotions. He
Oh,
can
I
say,
see what you're
I'm going
saying.
to look at the big picture. I'm going to go farther because like Stuart said, Angelus has to literally be held down by a spell, whereas everyone else can sort of control themselves and grow with what they have. Like we see it in Harmony's episode in Angel, where she literally had to just say, like, it's harder for me. I have no soul. I'm trying, and I'm trying to do good and be good. And Spike doing the same, whereas Angelus is so unhinged that he legitimately takes out in one of the most powerful scenes of season 2, and he had to do it in Angelus' face. He removes Jenny Calendar from let's just say the cast of characters in the best way to say it.
Oh my
That was
god.
And
the best neck snap ever.
it was terrifying, and they couldn't do it as Angel because the fans could not see Angel do it. It had to be Angelus.
Oh, it had to be.
But that
Sorry.
was what every single thing that he did evilly, like in an evil way or a sadistic way, he did as Angelus. Never
Yeah.
once in all of the horrible things he did, including almost killing Willow, he did with a vampire face. Like
Which is so interesting because
it's great because it shows the duality of the sides of the character, that people needed to associate Angelus with a vampire and Angel with a soul of the angelic face.
Right, but do you think that's kind of sort of a disservice to the fans? Because if we think of like Vampire Diaries, which literally has taken so much of its lore and its fans from Buffy, when Stefan does evil or Damon does evil, it's them, and they just have to live. And the fans and also the cast have to live with the fact that, like Stefan and Enzo, it's like it was him in that moment, and he was seductive, and he was. Did I do it again where I said it 2 words together? No, never mind.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Productive and vindictive.
He was evil, but he did it with a smile on his face. Whereas I think there was I don't know if it's just we have so much stock in Angel that we can't show him doing this, so it has to be the evil version. But I think you should trust your audience enough, Stuart. I'm sorry.
I have one comment to make. I'm going to just interject here.
One?
I completely agree with you. I think though what they did in Vampire Diaries, which they didn't do in Buffy, and I think what we can talk about with Buffy, and I think this is something that is important throughout all the characters of the season we are going to talk about, was it's all a very black and white. And I think what Vampire Diaries did was they set clear guidelines at the beginning of the show. If you turn your humanity off, you are evil. And I think with Buffy, they lived in good or bad. And then as they continued on in the show, they started revisiting the
They did.
vampiric
Yeah.
lore,
Yeah.
and then shifted it more to gray. Whereas like as in Vampire Diaries, they
Started
sort
that
of
way.
Yeah.
started that way. They were like, and what I find most interesting in Vampire Diaries is you hear from Catherine being like, I never turned it off. I did these things, all this evil for self-preservation.
Mm-hmm.
It's me. Whereas Angel did it because he had no soul. So I do think, but I did want to get back to our conversation about Cordelia. We
Right.
kind of like went on a
Also-
little tangent about.
And I have
Not
to
about
apologize.
Cordelia, but we have to get to the point where he loses his soul because I'm
Right.
sorry, he does do the most evil thing ever
Yeah.
Right.
in Angel face when he says, "I love you too, babe." That,
Oh.
that was the worst. Okay, sorry, Stu, go back to Cordelia, then we'll.
No. I was just gonna say, like, I think Cordelia did a lot of layering. Stefan?
Oh yeah.
Well, I just wanted to apologize because I'm so used to like moderating that I just keep passing it to Stuart. My bad. I remember I'm like, Stu, go ahead. It's like, that's not my, it's not my podcast.
When he sits there so cute with his hand up, you kind of have.
I'm like, hi.
Guys, I'm here too.
But no, I think with Cordelia, I think in the season 1 you got a very like one-dimensional mean girl. I think you got a little bit more layers
so much better.
near the
Yep.
end.
Yep.
But season 2 and into season 3, when she departs for Angel, and they really do a lot of hard work. I think
Yeah.
season 2 you start to see that mean girl facade, especially when she starts dating Xander or like secretly like making it with Xander after What's My Line Part 1. I think you have that slow, he gets in there and he kind of breaks in that barrier, and she sees that when you're directing your energies toward helping people
Mhm.
and doing good things and being selfless, I think you see that's those seeds happen, which is why it's so tragic in season 3 when she's so hurt because
Yes. One of the best
she
episodes
can't
of
go
season.
back.
Oh,
Right.
it is.
Fell.
But she tries to kind of go back to that mean girl
She
that
can't.
she was before, but she can't do it. She's seen too much. She's felt too much. And I really appreciated the work she did, because even when she's one of the funniest characters, like some of the one-liners she comes up with,
Oh my
one of these
God.
days you're gonna wake up in a coma.
Yeah.
Like, I think it was they were able to write her off of Giles very well. She had a really great sparring with Buffy.
Yeah.
In Some
with
Assembly
Oz.
Required, when she's talking about my drama, my this, and they're just like, they're there. One of the funniest lines ever, or one of the funniest scenes, is when Cordelia's trying to open up, try to be emotional. Everyone's like, they're there. I was like, that is so clever. Also, I just have to say it. Angel Investigations, we help the helpless. Okay. I just had to put it out there.
So I think what we have to get to when Buffy loses her soul, because obviously there's no bigger metaphor for a high
Buffy
school
doesn't.
girl. When Angel loses her soul, there's no better. That might have been like a Freudian. There's no better metaphor, obviously,
For abstinence.
when the girl has sex for the first time with the guy she doesn't know all that well, and he wakes up in the morning an asshole.
Yep.
He
got what he wanted.
I
He
love
got
it.
what he wanted.
What a metaphor.
I'm gonna be like a really like, I'm gonna be an opinion Ophelia for a second, but like, the one thing I cannot stand about like that people have done for like vampiric stories for so long is and you see this in Twilight, and you kind of see this in like shades of Buffy sometimes as well, depending on the writer. You get this middle America, like very like like religious belt, sort of like, don't have sex before marriage, stay pure. If
Literally,
you have sex, become a murderer and kill you. Like, it's like you will die if you
Don't
have
have
sex.
sex. Yeah.
But it's
Urban legends.
only
Yeah.
assigned to females. Men are
100%.
out there in the world just having sex with all that moves.
Yes,
And that's
impunity.
This
Sure.
woman gives up her virginity, and they're like, "I'm sorry, your boyfriend now a serial killer, and is going to come
Yeah.
after and kill all your family and friends."
What did we learn? What
That
did we learn?
orgasm.
You think it's
Keep those
middle
legs closed,
America?
ladies.
It's not middle America. It's America. Look, they just repealed Roe v. Wade. They're doing
God.
Buffy all over again down there.
Seriously.
They're like, it's all your fault. Keep your leg. I have heard elected officials in 2022 say, "Keep your legs together, ladies." Like that.
It's disgusting.
They're all in.
my favorite, like the worst one that because then chills in my spine was one of the elected officials saying, "I trust women. I do trust women. I trust women to control when a man ejaculates inside of her."
Yes,
And I
thank
was
you very
like,
much.
Jesus, what?
out
Yeah.
loud
Oh
in
yeah.
a fucking public meeting,
In,
and all the women around her were like,
but no, but she gets accolades from
"Yeah,
idiots. We
yes,
we live we still live there. Every horror movie, and I would love to do a whole thing on horror movies, but every horror movie is exactly
That's
what you
PJ.
said. It's an urban legend keeping kids from having sex and all putting it all on women, and there's a reason for
always."
that. Having sex, drinking, and doing drugs. That is all on her. And
And
she's supposed to protect the family,
It's
and
a
she's supposed to
puritanical
protect her
framework
purity.
100%.
living.
It's such horseshit because it's so ridiculous. Like all the pressure is on her. It's up to her. Like 100% agree with you. And I hate the fact that this idea of fuck, I've lost it. I got so passionate that I lost my train of thought. But it was just this. Ah, I hate it. I hate it. I hate the fact that the idea is don't. Oh, it's expecting teenagers, specifically women, to just expect heartbreak, expect the men that care about you and the people that care about you
Absolutely.
to hurt you, because
Yeah.
the second you're vulnerable, the second you give up innocence or your virginity or your happiness, that's when they turn on you. That's when it goes bad. And now, just so stay hard, ladies. Just stay
And
hard.
I think it's hilarious that we associate innocence with virginity. I was just saying this as I was driving home. I'm like, you know what's weird? Oh, I know why. Because they beep the F word in every song, right? They beep the F. You can never hear the F word on radio, and I think that's hysterical, considering what I can watch on TV. Because we've been watching reruns of Dexter, and I'm like, what time did Dexter come on at night? 8. So 8 p.m. with him, you can sit down, put on channel 8, and watch all these horrible people do awful things, like, and you see it. And then the hero of the season, of the series, then kills them. All there's nothing blurred, there's no problems, but I shouldn't be able to hear the F word? What
Yeah,
is wrong with us?
I
Yeah.
honestly
ridiculous.
think like let's look at that episode for a second. That episode was surprise when she lost her virginity to Angel, and I think it
Great
was really
episode.
interesting because it
This
was a great
if
episode.
anybody's
Amazing
watching Buffy for
episode.
the first time and you get to that episode and you're not hooked, I don't know, you're broken. I don't know
Yeah,
what to
So
tell
something's
you.
wrong. Something's wrong.
the
Something's
entire
wrong.
episode centers around them trying to stop Drusilla and Spike from assembling the judge to kill Buffy, and like rain hell on Earth. You get Luke from season 1 back as the judge, which I thought was really fantastic.
Really
Same
interesting.
actor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's
What's that,
awesome.
Joe? Yeah.
But I find it most interesting because what happens is Buffy prevails. They have they go into go to the docks. They send the arm away. Jenny's like, send this arm away forever. They get back to Angel's apartment, fight through it, and they both confess their love for each other. They have sex. They go to sleep. Angel wakes up screaming, and the episode ends. What I
There it
find
is.
most interesting about that was that you have Buffy wakes up in the beginning of the episode screaming over the fact that she has a dream that Drusilla kills Angel.
Right. Yeah.
And at the end of it, she loses Angel. And she loses Angel in this sort of like frameworked world because she loved him and
Mm-hmm.
trusted him and gave up her body to him. Therefore, she loses him.
She's got to lose him.
She
And she's
lost
got
him.
to lose him. She got to lose him more than one way. So after he becomes bad, the rest of the season is brilliant because
Amazing.
Angelus is way better than Angel.
Yes.
Way
By
better.
far.
Angelus is
By
better than
far.
Angel. By
Yeah.
far. Like, it's not even close, right? And we see episode after episode of her dealing with the fallout of this. Initially, she doesn't even want to tell anybody yet. But it's all about what she's done. And there's that very sweet moment with Giles in the car. You guys know what
Mhm.
I'm talking about?
Yep. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Where she kind of puts it on the table and he goes, it's not about, like, it's not your fault. It's not on you. And there's this I can't remember the exact dialogue that goes on, because, you can talk about being impetuous or you can talk about making maybe decisions on the flying, but that's not your fault. None of this world is your fault. But what we're going to find out season 7 is it was always set up to be her fault. And I say her as in Buffy's fault or her as in women's fault in general.
Mhm.
It's always been on the women. It's always been on the women to be virtuous, to be powerful, to think and feel bigger than everything else in this world. And it's been set up that way because men are too weak to do so.
Yeah, men
That's
are
the
weak.
theme of Buffy.
Men are weak.
Oh, I forgot. Wait, are you talking about the scene
Oh,
where she turns to him in the car and she says,
yes,
"You must be so disappointed with me,"
yes.
and like
God, I
We
love that scene.
he's like,
thought,
he's like, I know that you loved him, and he showed multiple times he loves you back, and then
yeah.
something like, do you want me to wag my finger at you and tell you that you're wrong? And that was, I love that Giles is like our sex positive king, like all
Yeah,
the father we all
like
needed. Like,
just
Because we know, you know why? Because we'll talk about the Ripper later. We know he was into some
yeah,
interesting stuff back in the day.
but it's also like another man saving a woman, even though this entire thing is about women
Well,
empowerment.
legitimizing. Yeah,
Yeah, legitimizing.
also,
I
yeah,
really
legitimizing.
sometimes I really wonder about Joss Whedon's just overall ideas on women and society, because we hailed him for as a feminist who brought
Sure.
women to the forefront and empowered them and this and that. But like when you really go back and look at these scripts and look at these scenes and look at these themes, did he did he really?
I think, well, first of all, he's not a good person. But second of all, we have to, that we'll put that out there. The dude wasn't, I don't think he got any girlfriends in high school, and he was just sort of playing that out for the rest of
He
his
was the
life.
Xander. Yeah.
He was Xander, yeah, who eventually got a movie deal. But I think the interesting part is we still have to remember what it was like in 1995 or whatever
eight,
year this 97,
97,
98.
98, yep.
right? We have to remember, like, guys, that's hell of a long time ago, and we also have to remember what just came before that. Gay marriage, not even a possibility,
Not even close.
right? Being out and being gay, not even a, like, people were out, but it was painful and it was violent and it was, all of those things. You just started seeing equity laws change to protect women from being sexual assaulted in their marriage. That just happened in the late 80s. We were still living in that culture. And do I think he maybe tried to show something strong and whatever, but he still existed, as gross as he is, he still
Within that.
existed in that time.
Yeah,
But
no,
I
it's
also,
true.
yeah, and I think that you have a lot of these characters existing. Like, yes, I think for 1998 and throughout, I think Buffy can be seen as a feminist icon. If you take Buffy abstractly out of the framework of the show that she's in, yes, her, Willow, um, Faith, all these characters, Cordelia, they're all feminists in their own right. They stand up for themselves. They fight their own battles. They do this. But I think it becomes problematic when you layer the men on top of their storylines, because a lot of their storylines are told through a male lens, through a male, like the gaze.
The Watcher.
Also, exactly. You have a series of men who basically started the Slayer line. You have men are easily corrupted and therefore corrupt the women in their lives as well. So I think it's interesting because I think you have these seeds of what we classify as modern day feminism now. But I think in that moment, I think what Joss Whedon did have was strong female writers who were able to seed in these conversations that were really needed to have. Because you didn't see brash depictions of female sexuality on TV at this time or in movies. It was all very chaste, like Seventh Heaven era, keep your WB era, where it was very much a huge thing to lose your virginity. It was massive storylines. The thing is later on in this series, you have Buffy, and I remember rewatching the episodes in season 4 of her and Parker and being so angry at the fact this like fling is a 5-episode arc about how miserable she is. And I was like, but Buffy sucking Summers. Like, what are you? This man is like a speck.
Pull it together.
Pull it together.
What are you doing? Yeah, get your stuff together.
You have suffered through so much worse than this literal like amoeba. But
Sack
I
of
find
meat.
that's the part. Is like exactly.
It
But
still
I find
goes back to
that's the kind of trade off in the show is you have these great storylines, these great moments with Giles and Buffy, where he's like, well, I'm not going to wag my finger at you. You are in control of your own body. You did what you thought was right for yourself. No one can hold accountable. But then you have these other, like it often is bookended with
Yeah,
this really regressive attitude toward females told through men. And I
sure.
think that's the most interesting thing the most interesting thing about Buffy through all the seasons is you
Yeah.
see the work that those female writers and that kind of like uh, resurgence of like female voice and owning their own stories. But then you have this kind of like clash with that kind of
Mhm.
traditional, most comfortable for America mind or North America mindset.
Which is honestly probably
Absolutely.
where Joss came in. Like
Yeah.
they're like,
Exactly.
here's my story, and the women are like, let's just add a couple things.
Right. But I think
Yeah.
that's the most interesting part about Buffy. I enjoy watching it for that, is like seeing that
Mhm.
like push and pull.
Sure.
Yeah.
But that would be the push and pull of that. It's still the push and pull. It's
Yeah.
Yeah.
still the push and pull, right?
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
it's funny. I've been forced to watch Teen Wolf. And what I find interesting about Teen Wolf, heaven help me.
Forced.
Well, I'm
I love
forcing her to
Skylar.
watch 90210, the original. And I'm watching Teen Wolf. But what's
Mhm.
interesting about Teen Wolf is the way that I can't remember the girl's name, the way that the two main girls are written. They don't give a crap. And that girl on the first date, by the looks of it, has sex with Scott and never thinks about it again. There's not any guilt. There's not any anything. And I
Great.
was just like, whoa, whoa, did she just throw him in that bus? Is that what's going on right now? And
Oh,
and so you see
Allison?
that
Allison?
push. Is it
Are you talking
Yeah,
Allison
Allison.
or
Allison.
Allison? Yeah.
You see that change, but then the whole, now granted I'm not very far, but you still see it so painfully, and this is an interesting question, so painfully from the side of men.
Mm.
Mhm.
Is it because, and this is a great question, I want to come back to the end of Buffy because I know we only have 10 minutes left, but is it because, do you think, even if you had the most progressive writers, even if you had the writers that knew exactly how to formulate it so it became sort of the most perfect feminist, equitable kind of superhero story, do we still live in an era where you have to sell the TV show? And if you have to sell the TV show, you better put the leading man winning the day in there somewhere.
I,
Are we
I
still there?
what okay, so that's a really interesting question. It's something that we talk about a lot on Rebel Out of Closet, kind of different mindset of talking about more from an LGBTQIA perspective of this
Mhm.
Mhm.
question. But I agree with you. I'm gonna throw a kind of caveat in there. I do think you have more female led stories. I think the issue oftentimes, and you see this with the discourse with Captain America, or sorry, Captain Marvel, was that then you
Oh,
have kind of all of these incel, like very much comic book uh, assigned
oh yeah,
enthusiasts,
they know the
experts.
rules because they read the comic books. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
You have them kind of entering the chat and being
Mhm.
quite problematic in
Destructive.
those things and
Yes,
destructive
100%.
and it kind of owning the narrative of like, well, she's hated because she's confident and she stands up and she's one liners. So I think television currently is more perhaps uh a little bit farther along in that
Yeah,
process. I
maybe.
think you see a lot more of those storylines on television and have the ability to explore them a little bit more.
Mhm.
I do
You also
think,
get more
however,
time.
we're a lot.
Yeah.
Sorry,
You
I
also get a
also
lot
Yep.
more
think
time.
right,
You
a
get a
lot
whole
more time to
season.
build this out.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I also think, like in a show like Teen Wolf that came out many years after Buffy, you're also seeing the feminization of male storylines.
Yeah,
And you
true.
see a lot of those
Absolutely.
storylines as well, which is also something that we don't see quite a bit. We don't see
Yeah,
like um, a broad scope of human emotion from male characters, and like Styles, main character in that show, has
100%.
all of the emotional scope and
Yeah,
range. The only difference is they write him like a female character. They write him, sorry, traditionally like a female character.
sure, sure,
He's a
sure. A lot
damsel in
more
distress,
feminine.
a
Yeah,
lot more feminine qualities, and I think as a society we accept that more from a television show. We would not go see a movie with those.
yeah.
You would not go
Well,
see a
because they
movie of
build on it
Styles.
slowly, right? He
Right.
becomes, like you said, Stefan, he becomes endearing. You don't even know
Yeah.
you're starting to like him. And then you're like, oh shit, I like the character that's like, so it becomes that. And maybe it's given space to that. But often thought, because people talk about it so much, what the movies are supposed to do. I'm like, movies and TV show are supposed to make money. They're,
Yes.
they're not supposed
Supposed
to
to.
change the world.
No.
And if they change the world too fast, they don't make any money. And guess what? They get kicked off TV. There have
Yeah.
been great shows with amazing that were written too early. And if they were written 5 years later, they would have had a much more significant run,
Like
right?
Yeah.
True Calling.
What's up?
True Calling with Eliza
True
Dushku, where she
Calling.
True Calling,
True
great
Calling.
show.
I'm thinking of
Even
Saving
Dollhouse.
Grace with
Saving Grace was great too.
Holly Hunter was amazing. Are you was amazing. It got 3 seasons. Why did it get 3 seasons? You know what I mean? Or United States of Tara was also
Oh my god,
equally
I
I heard
love
about
amazing.
that. Yeah.
show.
It's an amazing show.
Loved it.
Sorry.
Apparently,
So I want to get to the end of Buffy only for season 2, only because I know you guys are constraints of time. Otherwise,
I
we'd sit
mean,
here all night.
yeah, but the way you guys are talking, I got to go watch Teen Wolf.
Oh my
No,
god.
I don't know.
It's
I
a
don't.
little bit campy.
You know what? It's not horrible. It's fun to watch. I would have preferred if Styles was actually the main character.
I would prefer if Styles was actually the main character and actually openly bisexual.
Wouldn't that be lovely?
I would love that. Stefan, if you
Wouldn't
want to
be
have a
really
really good
stuff, right?
time, just type in Derek and Styles fan fiction.
I'm
Oh,
sure.
sure.
I'm sure.
I've written my own Angel Spike fan fiction. I get it.
Yeah. Steric fan fiction is those fans
Go all in.
are filthy. And I'm
All right.
like here for it all.
Oh, please. I've seen like the Dean and Sam Winchester Chronicles. That's insane.
Ugh.
But the interesting question is, okay, minus the you got to play this after midnight kind of storyline. The interesting question is, you make Styles the lead character, you make him bisexual. Does that even get past the pilot?
That's the thing. I don't think at the time
Probably
that show was
not.
released, I don't
No.
think so. I think
No.
it's interesting because it's an MTV show, so I think they may have gotten maybe like 3 or 4 episodes out of it. But unless
Mhm.
it was so amazing and well written,
Yeah.
it wouldn't have got it. It rested on the laurels of a very shaky, uh, um, like supernatural lore. It did
Right.
not do well with world building. It world built as the show progressed, and that caused problems with the back storylines.
Well,
Yeah,
and not
absolutely.
to add to, because I know we want to finish it up, but like, do you think it's interesting that if you think of it in that context, do you think part of the reason that Buffy, when after Surprise and Innocence, do you think if they didn't have it so that he went evil because they had sex and this was sort of a cautionary tale to the audience, do you think if they went another way with it, that would have canceled the show? Like, do you think that influence of having that sort of response of this is what happens when you have sex, this is what
I think it
happens
was.
to, do you
I
think
think
that
in
maybe because it's
1999 that
Fox?
really served a purpose. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Or
it
sorry,
really.
it's WB. It was WB. Yeah.
It was a WB back then, right?
But I think they
But
had
then
a very specific. You're right, because it was Dawson's Creek and Seventh Heaven and all these other shows that are very similar. And I think that might have been sort of a pull of you need to
Yep.
write this into your story,
a
or at
little
least
bit.
somehow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you need to
I
have
want to
this.
ask you a question.
yeah.
What female character on the WB who lost their virginity in a television show, which usually was the full episode storyline, how many of them had a good experience? How many of them walked away? Check mark, that was fine. Because I would probably wager a guess, and I haven't seen them all, that not all it was supposed to be. It was a bad decision the first time before some man who is
Yeah,
good and pure comes and saves her, and
yeah.
her first time was
Or they
always
had
bad.
to hide it. They felt like they
Yeah.
had to
Exactly.
hide it because I know Joey and Pacey, that whole storyline,
Yeah.
felt like 'cause they eventually did it, but it was like hidden and they didn't want to talk about because it's personal, because it's this, because it's that. It's just like, ooh, now you made something that was lovely, hopefully
Mhm.
not even in its aftermath, you know.
And we didn't even talk about the fact that Sheila in School Hard was a bad girl who owned her sexuality, who didn't
I love
care. She
Sheila.
was literally going to a Cadillac with 2 dudes. And what happens
Yeah.
to her? She dies. Because of course she
Yeah.
does.
She
Because
dies.
she's a bad girl. She's a bad
She
girl.
has to.
And Buffy's trying so hard to be the good girl and
Yeah.
still getting reprimanded for it because the principal's an asshole. But
Yeah.
Sheila was sort of like the bad girl who got destroyed. What
No,
was he not?
You went after you about
Okay,
Armin Shimmerin.
I just think it's just funny that it kind of brings that story of be good, stay in school, don't go
Yeah.
with random dudes from a biker bar. I mean, that's just like good advice for anybody, but
I have always wanted to ask this question, and you're a teacher, so I can finally ask it in a
Love it.
place where you will be able to answer from a place of
I feel like I
authority.
know what you're going to say. I feel like I know what
What
you're going to say.
the fuck was going on with the goddamn principal? Why did no teacher step in and was like, you seem to have a personal vendetta against a student. What is going on? Maybe we have a school board meeting, perhaps, or something like on
You're
full
asking,
display during school hard. And
you
every
know what?
parent was like, totally fine.
Also,
You
how
know
about the
what
fact
though?
that oh
He
sorry.
gets eaten. He gets
Yeah,
eaten.
fair
So
enough. Spoiler alert.
I,
In real life, like that
I
I think
think
like
it's
you
funny. I do think principals. I think it kind of, again, everything's exacerbated, right? Everything is bigger than life. I think the notion that a principal doesn't like kids is actually very common lore, common whatever. It's like the teacher that was always a crappy teacher. They're the ones that get promoted. They're the ones that get to run the school because they never like kids to begin with. And they're just about discipline and they're controlling and they're about structure, right? I think it kind of builds on that a little bit.
But can I ask a question? Because let's be honest. Let's think about season 1 and season 2. What has Buffy done? Nothing. Buffy has gone to class. Buffy has gone to class. She went for cheerleading. She was helping out with the computer sciences. What she's always in the library. What has she actually done to make Principal Snyder hate her so much that he would say, two students, which I'm setting up to fail, are going to put the entire parent-teacher venture together. One
I'll
that
tell you
never
what,
comes to class, and Buffy Summers, who has done nothing. Like,
this is
what
why.
is happening?
Because somebody that is I think what he represents is the establishment. I think what he represents sort of, thematically is what we should have, what we should be, how people should act. And I think Buffy, with her essence, I don't think she has to do anything or say anything. I think she has to walk into the room, and the energy she has and brings to the table is, no, I'm not following these rules. Right away, she doesn't want to follow her watcher. She is the worst slayer compared to all slayers ever known because she doesn't follow the rules. She doesn't do the right training. She doesn't,
Won't
she's
be the
like, oh, I
best.
didn't know there was a book, right? He chucks
Yeah.
the book with Buffy. And I think it's that. It's as soon as she walks into the space, she has power and he knows it. And I think weak men are
Yes.
terrified of
Of strong
strong
women.
women. What do they
Yep.
try to do? What do they try to do? They try to criminalize. They try to, well, again, we're right
regulate,
in 2022. You
legislate out.
criminalize,
Yep.
you stitch a scarlet letter on their chest and call it a day. And they don't do anything but have intelligence and a smart mouth.
Yeah.
But also,
You know,
are we
She
gonna
has
like
done
talk
nothing.
about are we going to talk about Kendra and Buffy? Because Kendra's a huge thing. It's the first Slayer we've seen other than Buffy, and she's a huge part of the
oh yeah,
season.
I
And
totally
also,
forgot.
just off what you just said, exactly, she is the complete polar opposite of Buffy.
There we
She is
go.
someone who was given to her
100%.
watcher as a child, raised just to be a Slayer, has no distractions, no friends, no family. She is just a Slayer through and
There we
through.
go.
Her, but
And
like
what happens?
but I also think too, like what I want to talk about, I not so much her death, but I want to talk how Buffy changed her. And I
Yeah.
think that's the
Yes.
most important part about
Yeah.
it. And I think that's what we should focus our energies.
Don't make me
Is
chick
that
fight.
not yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, but not how she died, because her death tragic, and I think Stefan mentioned this a while back of like Buffy running through the hallway in slow
Oh God,
motion.
that run
But I
slow mo.
think but I think what we can talk about is how Buffy's like direct influence on her to be like, own your power. You are the Slayer. You're the one with the power. You make your own rules.
Be
Ultimately,
strong.
be strong. Exactly. Which she says to Dawn too. And I wish that she had, after she said be strong to Dawn, it meant like,
Be brave,
after I
live.
throw you off this tower,
Yeah.
like be strong as you hit the ground. Yeah.
Just know that you'll bounce.
Yeah.
No, but
You'll be
also
dead before that.
But also, I was so confused by Kendra, and I don't want to go too deep into it because I know we're trying to wrap up soon. But I was confused by Kendra because she was, yes, as a child, she was given to her watcher. Could you imagine if that was all for naught? Because we learn in season 7 that dozens, if not hundreds, of girls are rising because of the incident between Buffy's resurrection and Faith and the Scooby Gang. And I found it so interesting. I'm like, wait, so was it always predetermined? And if so, why wasn't Buffy told about it well beforehand, or the Slayer before her? Who was the Slayer before her? We never know.
There's some holes in that for
There's some
sure.
retconning issues.
There's some
Because
issues
there's a
there.
lot
But
of watchers.
Guys,
Like, what
I
are they
think you have to
doing?
come back for part 2 of season 2, because we've talked about
Yeah.
so little of the actual season. Like, we need to talk about Willow and Xander and Oz.
Oh my God, Oz! We didn't even talk
Okay.
about
New
Oz.
calendar.
You know what? I say we do a part 2. I say
Yeah,
we
we
do
have
a
to do
part
part
2
two.
of season 2 because I think because I think, and I'm going to leave it on this, and then I'm going to go and we will do a part 2 of season 2. We're going to have multiple parts of every season. I can feel it now. Because I think the important lesson she teaches Kendra isn't just to be strong, it's to have good people, chosen family in your world. That's the difference between a regular hero storyline of a Captain America and a this and a that, and all of those masculine focused heroes where they do it on their own because they've made the right choice, because they're stoic and they're this and they're that. The best part that this show does is it shows you that you are strong, not alone. Nobody is better alone. You are strong because you've surrounded yourself, because you love, because you are loved, and you depend on those people in your world. And I think that's the brilliance of the show.
I agree.
I agree.
100%. And they demonstrate that multiple times.
They do. And we'll talk about that in part 2, season 2. We will do that next week. But thank you, everybody, for coming out and listening to part 1 of season 2. And Stefan, can you tell us where we can find you before we go?
Yep, SJ Maroney on Instagram, or RWACPOD also on Instagram.
Amazing. I will put everything in the little bio. And Stu, what about you?
You can find me at Janikin, You can find me at Janikin, JANIKON_ on TikTok and Instagram. Come laugh with me every single day. I'm recently in my slump era because I have no thoughts or feelings on what I'm going to create for content. But you know what I did yesterday?
We're going to redo that poster right behind your head. That's what we're
Yes.
going to do.
Oh, that's what we have to. But I did paint my cabinets, guys. So
the bearskin rug of me, I'm going to put that on there.
Love that.
Watch. The next time is going to be me like this.
I love it. I'm into it.
Pause out.
Amazing. Well, thank you guys so much for coming out. And as for all of my listeners, thank you for hanging out with us. And I will see you next Tuesday. Same bat time, same bat station. Dismissed.